Standing by the Potomac River for a few minutes would be a danger towards your health. That's how bad the situation of the river was in 1966. The Potomac River had become an open sewer because people actively dumped their sewage and garbage into it, making the river stink, and activities like swimming and fishing were impossible. This was also the case for many other national bodies of water in America, which quickly became a severe issue. Senator Edmund Muskie was uninformed about the severity of water pollution until he had to work with the Air and Water Pollution Committee.
Air? What the hell do I care about air coming from Maine?
After focusing, he proceeded to read about the issue, then was struck by horror when he found out the immense problem that was ever so increasing with the nation's waters, and he made it clear he was willing to fix it. First established in 1948, the Clean Water Act, originally called the Federal Water Pollution Control Act, didn't start gaining most of its popularity until October 18, 1972, when it became commonly known as the Clean Water Act, or CWA. The Federal Water Pollution Control Act of 1948 was the first major U.S. law that decided to make a move in addressing the fact that pollution in the nation's waters is turning into a major problem. The new enforcement of the Improved Act of 1972 made further improvements and gained more popularity and attention from the public. The Clean Water Act is the principal law mandating pollution prevention and water quality of the nation's waters. The main focus of the act is to restore and preserve the chemical, physical, and biological components of the nation's waters. If you were to walk around the earth today without the CWA, you'd be in a completely different world. Lakes, streams, rivers, etc. would be infested with all sorts of pollution, from sewage to toxic chemicals, along with scraps of paper or pulps of all sorts of materials. All of this is prevented because of the Clean Water Act. Everyone has a right to clean, uncontaminated bodies of water. Edmund Muskie, along with his accomplices, worked hard to allow this act to be passed throughout his meeting with President Richard Nixon. His perseverance allowed the nation's bodies of water to be so clean and unpolluted today. Before the Clean Water Act, only about 1/3 of the nation's waters were safe enough for activities compared to the increasing 50% of safe waters today. Republican of Tennessee, Senator Howard Baker, said,
As I have talked with thousands of Tennesseans, I have found that the kind of natural environment we bequeath to our children and grandchildren is of paramount importance. If we cannot swim in our lakes and rivers, if we cannot breathe the air God has given us, what other comforts can life offer us?
Senator Howard Baker explained that we have a right to clean, safe water, but because of our foolish actions, the water is now almost all fully contaminated. The rights we once had will no longer be known to our grandchildren, as they'll never be able to have fun in a beautiful body of water if we don't find a way to stop the pollution. And that is what the CWA is fixing. When President Richard Nixon heard about the CWA, he decided to veto the act. Nixon wanted to attack pollution in
a way that does not ignore other real threats to the quality of life, such as spiraling prices and increasingly onerous taxes.
He said that the $24 billion act was just too expensive. Nixon said that the CWA is not a good way to handle pollution in the U.S., and that other methods would be more effective, along with the fact that he thought the huge price was unreasonable, but he'd be wrong. By cleaning the pollution in the nation's waters, the public's health would drastically increase. Senator Edmund Muskie noted that a mere 10-minute walk from the chamber, the Potomac River is a health hazard. Before the CWA was enacted, companies and people would dump gallons of raw sewage into all sorts of waterways, even if they were regularly inhabited. All of this makes Nixon wrong because the CWA would help with the quality of life. This allowed Nixon to realize why it's just so important to enact the CWA. After a long and tough battle, the veto on the CWA was lifted, which allowed the act to serve its purpose. The act's main purpose is to prohibit any discharge from point source pollutants unless it is done within the requirements of the act or if they have a permit. The CWA's establishment in 1972 made other groups add to the act, which allowed the CWA to expand more efficiently. In 1977, the CWA was refined and refocused by the Clean Water Act amendments of 1977, along with the Water Quality Act amendments of 1987. From then on, only more improvements and additions were added to the CWA, allowing it to change the world faster.
Each of us all across this great land has a stake in maintaining and improving environmental quality. Clean air and clean water, the wise use of our land, the protection of wildlife and natural beauty, parks for all to enjoy. These are part of the birthright of every American.
Ever since the CWA was officially enacted, our rights are now protected. The official enactment of this act helped bring along a new wave of improvements as well. Different organizations found inspiration after the CWA was made, and they branched off multiple improvements since. After the CWA allowed us the right to clean bodies of water, there were also responsibilities that must be in place in order to keep our rights intact. Responsibilities had to be given to the government, industries and municipalities, states, and more so that this act can have an effect. One responsibility the Clean Water Act brings up is for the government. The responsibility is to take action against construction caused stormwater going into our lakes and reserved waters. The Department of Justice states,
The section has brought Clean Water Act actions for construction-caused stormwater discharges against Walmart, Target, Paul, Centex, KB Homes, Richmond Homes, and many other small developers.
This is very crucial for the government to follow carefully because if they don't act on these sources of contamination, our drinking water and the ecosystem in the water will be disrupted and affecting things like our health and the food chain. The article Clean Water Act Reauthorization also shows the responsibility the states have. This article reads,
The 1987 amendments directed states to develop and implement non-point source pollution management programs. States are encouraged to undertake groundwater protection activities as part of their overall non-point source pollution control effort.
The states have to keep this in mind for the betterment of life on Earth. They must do this in order to keep the groundwater safe, as many states have reserves of groundwater that is used primarily for drinking and, if contaminated, would cause illness and disease to many people. States also have the responsibility to discharge permits and enforce them against industries and municipalities under the Clean Water Act. This must be carried out so the industries and municipalities will actually follow the rules. The Clean Water Act, a summary of the law, states,
Responsibilities under the Act that may be carried out by qualified states include authority to issue discharge permits to industries and municipalities and to enforce permits.
This is a major responsibility that the states have to carry out, as without them properly enforcing and discharging these permits, the industries and the municipalities could horrifically pollute the waters that we use, as well as the animals.
The CWA is still going on as of 2024, and many improvements have been added along with mishaps that ignore the rules of the Act throughout these years. One example is on June 1st, 2006, an administrator signed a rule that was published in the Federal Register. This rule states,
CWA requires that the location, design, construction, and capacity of cooling water intake structures reflect the best technology available for minimizing adverse environmental impact.
This is very important as harming aquatic life would have devastated the ecosystems in these areas, which could also affect us. In the step where these devices are implemented, they have to be made and put this way, which affects all of the old and new gas exchanges facilities on the shore. As of 2012, an estimate indicates about $271 billion had to be put into the efforts of the Clean Water Act and the EPA. As the EPA says,
States' needs can change for a variety of reasons, such as actual changes in needs, availability of project documentation, and ability to fund and staff data collection and entry efforts.
this is important as there have been a 20% decrease in money and funding put into the Clean Water Act, and because this act helps us in so many ways, decreasing money and funding will end horribly. In May 2023, the U.S. Supreme Court's Sackett decision significantly narrowed the Clean Water Act's protections, limiting safeguards to wetlands with a continuous surface connection to navigable waters and relatively permanent streams. This ruling reduces the scope of protected waters, putting ecosystems and wildlife at greater risk of pollution, which threatens species survival and ecosystem health. 1 year after the Sackett decision, states have struggled to fill the gaps left by the lost federal protections. However, Colorado became the first state to pass legislation restoring protections for excluded wetlands and streams. According to the Clean Water Action,
This example shines a light on what is possible at the state level to improve protections for the wetlands and streams left vulnerable in the wake of the Sackett decision.
this move highlights what states can do to protect vulnerable waters. Colorado's action set an example, urging other states to follow suit in safeguarding critical water resources. We hope that in the future, all states will follow in the footsteps paved by Colorado, as this will strongly enhance and strengthen the protection of the Clean Water Act. Also in the future, we want for the governments and the states to take more initiative of this act. The Clean Water Act also needs to gain more popularity so people can donate to further help save our waters.
From protecting our right to safe and contaminated water to enforcing rules that people must follow, it truly made a statement that protecting our nation's water is a necessary measure that must be taken in, so our lives, along with the animals, can be better.
The Clean Water Act has proven itself as an act that will not only expand, but keep allowing all life on Earth to thrive. Our health, animals' health, and even the health of soil, plants, and fungi will keep on improving more and more thanks to the CWA. This act proves that having clean bodies of water really does have an impact on the quality of life for the betterment of humanity, for the betterment of nature, and for the betterment of our waters. We all hold a deep respect for the Clean Water Act, as thanks to it, we get to continue experiencing the thrilling vitality of bodies of water.